It's Friday and you don't have class. So, woo, right? Woo! Yeah. So the Day of Great Expectations started about 5 years ago. It started, all teachers are required to have what's called an independent professional development plan. And we have to come up with something that we feel passionate about and want to work towards as educators. We are a profession that wants to, people don't choose, we choose to go into education because we're passionate about students and we're passionate about the future, because if you guys didn't know, you are our future. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's the truth. And for me, those of you that have been in my class and those of you that may someday be in my class, perseverance and self-discipline and those things are not just buzzwords for me, they're words that are really important. And so when Mr. Rang was here, our previous principal, we were talking about that in a meeting, and we were talking about not only Genius Hour, but we were talking about how can we teach that in a classroom setting. And then we realized, you know what, you really can't. You can't teach what it means to persevere. We really can't teach what it is to develop a system of self-discipline and integrity. And so through meetings and discussions and talking to other teachers, then we came up with all of you have, if you are freshmen all the way up to seniors, you've got have had the fun of going to the ropes course. Sophomore, when you become a sophomore, you get to go over to Lake Pahoja, and we start to kind of develop that idea of what is it to take to persevere, to maybe get to the top of that Jacob's ladder, if you guys remember that big wall at the ropes course, or what does it take to work as a team as you're paddling out to doing that amazing race and ending up in the lake, many of you. Marshall, weren't you one that ended up in, yeah. And then not only just having fun and building teams, because one of the wonderful things about teaching in a little school is getting to know you so very well. And for many of you, even getting to teach your parents, and that is also a joy for those of us that have been around that long, right, Ham? Mrs. John. But it is a joy, right? It's a blessing to be able to do that. So the Day of Great Expectations kind of came out of that. Last year we met in the gym, if you remember, because we had to kind of do a little bit more social distancing. And so we have I think, the ability to come back in here is another blessing. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk to some wonderful people that I've been sharing emails with since, I don't know, July probably. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. I have an introduction, and then we're going to do a panel discussion. If you've been in sophomore English, a panel discussion is you kind of like throw out a question, and they answer it, so it's not always going to go, Mr. Hufkey, Jillian, I don't know, should I call it Mr. Hufkey, Jillian? I gotta call her Jillian because I had her, I had all of these three, so. It's not gonna be like in a row, it's kind of like you're listening to a conversation, and that there's kind of like this wall here, but we know they're there, and we just want you to kind of listen to life experiences and hopefully give you maybe some tools and some inspiration to apply to your own life. After the panel discussion is over, the middle school will be breaking out and the girls will be going to the choir room, and the young men will be staying here. The seniors will be going to the library, the juniors will be going to the old commons, the sophomores will be going to the new commons, and freshmen, you'll go to room 208, which if you don't know, that's my room. And then we will have our sessions after that. Does everybody have a half a sheet of paper so that, okay, good deal. All right, so are we ready to get started? Are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
Thank you. I like feed off here. So we're going to start first. I want to introduce a little bit. Right here on my left. That's right, left, right. Yep, my left. This is Chris Hufkey. I just met him this morning, although we've been emailing quite a bit. A little family connection. He is Mrs. Schmidt's older older brother. I wanted to make sure that we did that in the right order, that it's her older brother. And currently, I gotta find his, because I stapled them in a different one. He was born and raised in Sioux City. He was born in Sioux City, but raised in Cherokee, Iowa. He has a Bachelor of Science degree at Iowa State University, but he says that his education has never been done, that he considers himself a lifelong student, a lifelong learner. And if you ever look above our library, that's one of the goals that GLR has. He has been involved in a variety of different kinds of occupations, operations, sales, public relations, and marketing. He says his passion is wrestling, entrepreneurship, starting your own business, and politics. That's where he and I probably share kind of a love. I have a love of politics too. I asked all of our panelists, where has perseverance made an impact on your life? And he said, by learning, staying in the fight. And then I'm going to save some of the other questions for a little bit later. So let's welcome Mr. Chris Hufkey. Our second panelist, that is also to my left, but is one that I know really well because I feel like she was just here, but this is Jillian Devore. She is a Mustang. She graduated in 2018. Jillian, when she was a 9th grader in my class, I usually ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? And Jillian said, I want to fly. And I was like, oh, do you fly often? And she says, no, I've never been on a plane before. Okay. We thought that was a little strange, and probably also tried to divert her from different jobs because, you don't say you want to fly when you've never flown before. And then she went with us to New York, and we landed in Chicago. I will never forget her face. And I said, what do you think? She goes, I'm going to do that forever. She started to take flight courses in June and got a job at Hy-Vee in order to pay for those flight courses. And she recently graduated from SDSU, go Jacks, and a degree with a bachelor's degree in aviation education. She did it in 3 years, which is quite amazing. And part of that was because of school here, because she took a lot of classes at NCC, and she also had her private pilot's license at the time. She is now a certified flight instructor, but what I think is really cool is that since November, she has been flying as second in command, a co-pilot in jets for Midwest Flying Services out of the Sheldon Airport. And what she does is she works as a medevac. She works with organ transplant teams, and she flies all over the country. Where were you? Yes, you were?
Little Rock, Arkansas, Jacksonville, Florida.
Arkansas, Florida. I saw a picture from over California at one point. And she also does some flight instructions there. And she's going to talk a little bit about persevering and also setting those dreams high and then putting the skills in, putting the time in to meet those dreams. So our second panelist is Jillian Devore. Our third panelist's name is Jennifer Demke. I knew her as Jennifer Behrens. She was one of my first graduates, and I can still see the Jennifer Behrens actually. Jennifer you have to be brave sometimes when you're asking people to do panel discussions, because I rediscovered what Jennifer, because you can't keep track of all of the students that you have and that they graduate, but I was in Sioux Falls and there was Sioux Falls Women's Magazine there and Jennifer was on the cover. And I was like, wow. And I took it out and I read her story, and I had to do a little bit of investigating. I first went to Sioux Falls Women's Magazine and so there was a little bit of sleuthing going on until I finally connected with Jennifer. And so I've been talking to Jennifer since July about asking her if she would be willing to come and share her story. And her story, just a little bit, she was born in Sibley but raised in George, and she actually, her freshman year is when we became Mustangs, and school was consolidated. And she went to SDSU, go Jacks, in communication studies and theater, and she's got an emphasis in radio, television, and film, and broadcast journalism. She's been working for 20 years as a freelancer for the Sioux Falls Women's Magazine, and she also works as public relations for the Avera McKinnon Foundation. I asked a question about what kind of hobbies do you have, and I think that this is really interesting. She likes local history, and so she worked on a documentary on the architect of W.L. Dow, right? Dow, okay. And she filmed a 1-hour documentary that appeared on South Dakota Public Broadcasting, which was eventually picked up and broadcasted nationally. And that went on, and she's written a book about this local architect. He's from the Dakota Prairie. He's a Dakota Prairie architect. So supposedly, if you go into Costco, you can find her book. So maybe we can do Barnes and Noble too. So you guys, that's really cool. I think that's I think that's neat. When asked about how perseverance has impacted her life, this is what drew me to her and her story in Sioux Falls Magazine, is that Jennifer in the article said that when she was in high school, remember I was her teacher, that she struggled with an eating disorder. And I remember reading that article in July in my job, because I had no idea. I really didn't. And the story that I read was just so impactful, and I knew that she had something to share with us about how we see ourselves and how sometimes what we think others see is not necessarily what we see. And so I think she's got someone, I'm really thrilled that she's here. I'm really thrilled that all of you are here. But I learned so much by reading that article. And so our third panelist is Jennifer Demke. And our next panelist is somebody we see in the hallways every day, and she's always got a smile for everybody. And okay, now I don't know if I call you Amanda or Miss Try.
I know, I thought about that.
Miss, okay, I might flip-flop, so I'm sorry. Miss Try also was a former student of mine about the same time that Jennifer was in school. And Miss Try was born in George and was raised in George and is a Mustang as well. And then she went to school in Kansas, and she's a Jayhawk. And she has more degrees than, she's got a lot of letters behind her name. She too is a lifelong learner, and she loves education, and she loves sharing that with others. When asked about perseverance, she told the story, and I'm going to let her tell her story of how perseverance has impacted her life and really a lot of people around her as well. I remember the day after Amanda's accident, and I remember the weeks and the months, and we were just literally just talking about it. She goes, oh, I've never heard that side. And because she was battling for her life when that all happened. And Ms. Try was very gracious because she was going to be a panelist for next year. Yes, I'm already working on next year. But when Mr. Hoeing, Jeff Hoeing, couldn't make it because of the change in dates, she was so gracious to say, well, I'll just come this year. And it was very, very nice of her to do that. So she's going to tell you a little bit about her story, her passions. She added something that I am forever going to ask, is if you had a 6-word memoir, what would that be? And she said she never stopped hearing her heart. And I thought that was an awesome, I'm going to forever, I'm stealing that. I'm just telling you, I'm stealing that. And so our last panelist is Amanda Try. All right, so I'm gonna have you just start us out here. So the 4 words that I kind of coined for the Day of Great Expectations is perseverance, self-discipline, having integrity, a value system that operates your life, and then the power of collaboration or cooperation with others. And so I've kind of taken the questions and broken them down into those 4. So we're going to start with perseverance, if that's okay. And I think that will lead into many of your introducing yourselves and your stories, if that will work for you guys. All right. So what has been an event in your life, or how has perseverance and kind of battling through rough times, can you give us a specific example where perseverance has been something powerful for you? And we can go down the line, we can, however you guys want to tackle that. You each have a mic, so.
I think,
It's okay, go ahead.
all right, so there we go. Well, thank you for this opportunity. And perseverance, when has it hit your life? My answer to that would be, when hasn't it? I believe that all of us, every day, we get up, we go to work, we get up, we go to school, and we face challenges, and whether it's the smallest thing about going to work where you really perhaps don't want to be there, maybe some of you feel that way when you come to school. What you have to do is obviously look at what it is, the long-term goal that you're looking for. But when I think about perseverance, I think about being on the wrestling mat as a kid, all the way through college. I think about working for Donald Trump, you know, in his first campaign. And I think every day now every day is perseverance. And I suppose I would just back it all up for all you young men and women, and I would say that just the recognition that life is, it's a match, it's an ongoing match, that every day in athletics or in school you face challenges. That's no different than in life, whether you have a relationship with your children or your spouse, you're dealing with all kinds of things. So for me personally, it's just the understanding that every day, the same wind blows on all of us. It's just how you set your sail. And one of the takeaways I would leave you with is just that phrase that I learned a long time ago. The same wind, two ships going through an ocean, have the same wind blowing on them. It's the direction of the sail by one captain over another captain that determines where that ship goes. And that's your challenge, is to make sure that you guide your sail.
Put that up. Yeah, he's got us all.
Yeah, kind of going off of what he just said, it's kind of up to you and how you choose to persevere through situations. I know for me, as soon as we took off on that plane, my first time on a plane, I said, I want to be a pilot. My best friend sitting next to me was like, okay, it's not that easy. And yeah, she was right. But all throughout my training, a lot of people didn't take me seriously, especially when I started taking lessons in high school. They're like, okay, you're going to grow out of it. It's not, she's going to discover it's not for you. And I actually chose to take those comments, and I guess it made me want to work harder, not only to prove to those people that I was serious, but also to myself, that it was something that I wanted to accomplish, and I wasn't going to let what people said or thought hold me back from accomplishing what I wanted to. And it happened throughout my whole training. I had classmates, mentors, through every rating. I got 6 of my ratings from SCSU, and each one was harder than the last. And pushing through that, and then I found working harder towards your goals, once you accomplish them, is just that much more rewarding. And so really, I guess the main takeaway of that is finding what's important to you, set goals for yourself that you want to reach, and don't listen to anybody else, and keep going.
Hi, I'm Jen, and I guess I'm next.
He's got you.
Sorry. I have probably
It's cutting in and out.
Yeah, there we go.
Trade.
Okay. I have probably lived with an eating disorder for the better part of my life. And when you have something like that, it's not only difficult on you, but it's difficult on everybody that is around you. And I was very fortunate that I had a lot of support. I had family, I had friends, my employer was phenomenal. Everybody played an instrumental part in it. It was difficult to persevere because at the time that I was dealing with my initial diagnosis, when it first started happening, there really wasn't a whole lot of support out there available. They basically just referred you to a counselor that had a scale in the room, and you just jump on the scale, they write down the number, and they say, how are you? And because of that, I think it definitely continued to grow. And so eventually, it had gotten to a point where I was no longer able to really function. And so the decision was made for me that I was gonna have to leave and that I was gonna have to seek inpatient treatment. And so it was probably the most difficult decision that I ever had to make, to leave my family. I have a 13-year-old daughter at home. My husband was gonna have to be taking care of her by herself, work, you know, they had to divvy up all my responsibilities. But I went, and it was very, very difficult. You do not lay around all day in your PJs eating like what some people think. You work really hard, and it's really difficult to kind of be able to keep up with everything. And so I guess the biggest thing for me with the self-discipline is when I start to feel as though I have these negative thoughts that start to enter my brain, and I start to look at myself and think, ooh, I don't like that, or I wish this was here, or wish that was there. I just need to know that is when I need to check in with my counselor, or I need to practice some of the things that I learned when I was in treatment, because otherwise you just begin to spiral back down. And I can tell you that when you do spiral back down, or if you, hopefully none of you will, but it is not a fun place. It's very lonely, and it's very scary, and you can lose a lot of friends. But I went back to work, and I had to box up all my clothes and try and deal with having things happen from the neck down that sometimes were a little bit hard to grasp. So there were days where my entire bedroom was probably covered in clothes because I was just taking them on and off and trying to find ones that fit and ones I felt comfortable in. And so I am happy to say that, you know, I am doing well now, but I learned that recovery really is something I'm probably going to be in for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to always maintain that self-discipline. You feel like skipping a meal, or if you feel like you don't want to go to your counselor that week because you're busy or you just don't feel like it. It's a lot of work, and so kind of different from these guys, I guess I would say that I am just really grateful that I was able to have that support so that I could persevere, and that I am able to have that self-discipline. Sometimes it's not even me, it's my husband. In fact, you know, he'll say, honey, you're not looking so hot, and they'll be like, okay, we gotta get back on track here. And so, you know, it kind of comes and goes, but that's basically my story. And I'd love to say that my story is a story that ended, but it's never gonna end. It's always gonna be there. And I've learned to accept that and embrace it and make it part of me, and hopefully convey to everybody else the severity that eating disorders can have on you, your family, your job, and that you are able to recognize the early signs and try to get the proper help. If I could go back, I would love to, because I would do things so much differently, but I am happy to be here today, and I'm very lucky to be here today.
So Jennifer, can I just ask, like when you were in high school, because I'm admitting that I didn't see it, so what kind of things did you do in high school to kind of hide Because I know that you talked about in the article that you
Yeah.
were really good at hiding what was going on.
Yeah, you become a really good manipulator or master of manipulation. You learn how to hide things, you learn how to kind of get by with things, because that's kind of what your mentality is. It's like, I just want to do my thing, everyone leave me alone, but then you have all these people coming at you, so then you suddenly start to try to dampen that by hiding things. And so I guess it was probably not as prevalent in high school as it did get in college. I know that I was roommates with a gal that was very athletic, and I started to adapt to her lifestyle and lost a lot of weight, and then that's when my friends said, we're gonna call your mom, and asked when I was home last, and they didn't do it, but I'm grateful for that, but there just wasn't a whole lot available for me at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody probably knows me, I'm Miss Try. And my story's a little bit different. So back almost 30 years ago, I was in a car accident, which left me to have a spinal cord injury at the T5 level, which is typically chest height. My life flipped upside down. I just didn't sustain a spinal cord injury. I had a lot of other things that happened, including soured liver, punctured lungs, collapsed lungs, broke all my ribs. I was just really fighting for my life the night that it had happened. And alcohol wasn't involved in any of my circumstances, but I would think that somebody would kind of ask that question. But so waking up and being told, hey, you have a spinal cord injury, and your life's a little bit different now because you're going to use a wheelchair to get around. So I always thought, my wheelchair was a jail sentence, right? But I don't think that anymore. I think of it as something that allows me to be independent, get around, and make a difference in the lives that people that I come across. A lot of people don't think that having or using a wheelchair, you should be able to do this and that. But I do everything and anything I want because I have a great support system, a great family that has allowed me to try things and fail at them, and then ask me questions about them, how we can change it and make it work. So I have a really open family, so that has really helped a lot. Persevering through medical rehab several times has been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. You give up your body and mind, essentially, and your soul to somebody and put your faith and trust in people to help you get through, right? And then they say, you're done, go do it on your own. And that was scary. So for me coming back to high school, after about a year in the hospital, it was completely different. I didn't want to sit home and not be involved in things. And so I have a mother that would not let me do that. So I tried to think of things I could do at school, right? So I became a wrestling cheerleader under Mrs. Johnson. She's not here right now. But, I also did high school track. And side note, I went to state track twice, the 400, 100, and the shot put, and placed 4th each year. So just going out and doing things and knowing and believing in yourself, I think is hugely something that we forget. We're like, ooh, I can't do that, I'm not gonna try it. I've always tried something, and even if I've failed at it, I still tried it. Because I don't want to have any regrets where I've thought I shouldn't do that. Like going off to college by myself in a different state, and my parents leaving me there, and I didn't know anything. And if you know anything about KU campus or Kansas in general, the hills are very steep. So I didn't have my smart drive at that time. It was all pushing, right? And that was hard, but I made it through. And you know, you find your people, and you know that you can lean on them and ask them questions about what it's, how and what their life looks like compared to mine, right? But I guess I've realized that my wheelchair has allowed me to go to places that I never probably would have if I wouldn't have sustained a spinal cord injury. I've been involved in a lot of different organizations and just advocating organizations for spinal cord injuries, like the Christopher Reeves Foundation. But
That was the first Superman.
yeah, he was the first Superman, so he sustained a spinal cord injury in his neck. But I guess one of the main things that I'd like to say and put across is, if you want to do something, do it. Believe in yourself, even if somebody doesn't believe in you. You believe in yourself to do it. And I do every day. I come across obstacles every day at school, and I voice it. I let people know. Here's an example. Somebody might not want to hear this. Our boxes, our mailboxes in the office are not is not a place that I can usually get to because there's boxes stacked around. And so and I couldn't reach my box. So one day I just changed my label, right? Because I'm not gonna ask always. I'm just gonna do, right? But I have said these things, and people now are aware, because a lot of people aren't aware, right? Because I do things differently, obviously, because of my injury. I guess that's pretty much all of it. Going back into school was super hard. Only person around Northwest Iowa at that time who had a spinal cord injury, and how are we going to deal with this at school? And can you reach your locker? Can you get up to the second floor? What desk are you going to use? All these questions flooded my mind when I went back to school, and I did get a lot of anxiety. However, I work with kiddos now that I think about that every single day and try to advocate for them. So it's taught me a lot of different things about myself and about how I can help others. And I hope nobody ever has to go through a lot of the different challenges that I've come across. But if you do, know that asking questions and sharing and not keeping that information in because people don't know is one of the major things that I learned also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,